Courage. Courage is the capacity to confront what can be imagined. Leo Rostin. In 2005, one of Devang's friends was diagnosed with juvenile diabetes. This form of diabetes is insulin dependent. Given that insulin is only available in injectable forms, this diagnosis translates to lifelong dependence on injections of insulin. When Devang learned that his friend would initially need not only up to 4 injections a day, but also a lifetime of diet restrictions, a regulated lifestyle, the need to carry insulin at all times, regular blood tests and consultations with not just endocrinologists but also other specialists, he was really upset. Life changes dramatically once a diagnosis is made. Devang was very concerned about how his 14-year-old friend would cope. What about his family? His sister? How will they make the numerous changes that would need to be made? He asked. In a few weeks, Devang shared the good news that his friend was feeling great. The injections were not such a pain and the restrictions not so hard to adhere to. I took this as an opportunity to reiterate to Devang why facing challenges with a smile is exemplary courage. I told him that every week in my practice, I see children who display extraordinary courage. Thalassemia patients being on a pump every night to remove extra iron because of repeated blood transfusions are heroic. Children with hepatitis B and C coping with repeated blood tests and injections are courageous. His own cousin Hidiren, who took a growth hormone injection every day for years, was an excellent example. Using an example Devang would relate too easily, I said, your hero Mark Zubair displayed courage by dropping out of Harvard, a university that thousands would do anything to get into. I believed that he would create a company that could change the way people relate to each other. Facebook did exactly that. Jeff Bezos quite a comfortable job in a hedge fund to start Amazon in a garage. Bezos based his decision on whether he would regret the decision when he was 80 and looking back at life. By quitting his job, he displayed courage. I urged Devang to find out about people who had put everything at stake to achieve their next goal when they were already successful. Risking everything when you have made it big. Dad, what would be silly, wouldn't it? Was Devang's view. It might be considered foolish, I said, but then these remarkable people displayed rare courage to achieve what they believed in. I decided to tell our son about 2 of my medical heroes, Dr. Christian Barnard and Dr. Thomas Stiles. Barnard was not only a brilliant surgeon, but also an able researcher. As a surgical trainee, he began to research a condition called congenital duodenal atresia, wherein the part of the intestine adjoining the stomach does not develop in babies. The babies begin vomiting after birth, and the treatment is a surgical procedure. Barnard observed that the success rate following surgery was poor. He examined different explanations for what caused the disease and the reasons why surgery wasn't a very successful option. He discovered that poor blood supply to that region of the small intestine was to blame. The reason surgeries were not successful was because they did not account for this. Barnard propagated a revised procedure that entailed more extensive removal of the intestine, and the results improved dramatically. As a child, Barnard had seen his brother die at the age of 5 due to an untreatable heart condition. Thus, early on in his career, he was also driven to develop ways to treat untreatable heart disease. He developed new techniques to cure heart disease in children, creating a new value to treat valvular disease. Barnard believed that anything others would do, he would do as well. He continued to find ways to make cardiac surgery more successful and safe. He also started thinking about heart plantation, preparing for it by performing kidney transplants. In 1967, Louis Wascansey was referred to Dr. Bernard with incurable heart disease and was likely to survive only for a short period of time. On 2nd December 1967, Bernard received a call informing him that a lady called Denise Derval had met with an accident and her family had agreed to donate her heart. Opportunity had come knocking, and he was faced with many questions. Should he embark on a procedure that had never been undertaken before? Was he ready? Was the team well prepared? Surgeons in other countries had done more work on animals. Should he do more animal work before doing a transplant in a human? Finally, he threw caution to the wind and decided to take up the challenge. He took Denise to the operation theatre, took out her heart, and connected it to the heart-lung machine. He removed Louis' heart and replaced it with Denise's heart. The 30-member team took 9 hours to perform the operation. Louis recovered and Bernard became world famous. However, 19 days later, Louis developed pneumonia and succumbed to it. 4 weeks later, an opportunity arose for another heart transplant. Bernard knew that if this patient died as well, heart transplantation would forever be tinted with apprehension. He had a choice. He would bask in the glory of the first successful, albeit short-lived heart transplant and wait till overall understanding of transplantation improved. Or he would risk everything and go ahead with the second heart transplant. He chose the latter. The second heart transplant was performed on 2nd January 1968, and the patient, Philip Blaberg, lived for 19 months and 15 days. Bernard's courage paved the way for the establishment of heart transplantation. His work also set the stage for defining brain death criteria. This resulted in organ transplantation becoming standard therapy for end-stage organ failure. Bernard's surgery was emulated by surgeons across the globe. According to him, you learn from mistakes, but success gives you the courage to go on and do even more. He continued to innovate and performed many more heart and lung transplantation. Bernard was not only a pioneer in the field of medicine, but he also opposed apartheid by allowing mixed-race nurses in the operation theatre and transplanting the heart of a white woman into a black man. Each year, 4,000 people worldwide undergo a heart transplant. They all have Christian Bernard to thank. When one looks back to Bernard's life, one realizes that he started making bold and courageous decisions early in her life, a lesson that is important for parents trying to instill confidence in their children. Thomas Stahl's mother, who was a nurse, inspired him to become a doctor. After training as a surgeon, Stahl started his experiments by performing liver transplants in animals. After working in Miami and Chicago, he moved on to Colorado to practice as a surgeon while engaging in transplant research. After 5 years of research, he attempted a human liver transplant in a 3-year-old boy who died from bleeding. 2 months later, he attempted another liver transplant in an adult, and the patient died 3 weeks later. Faced with failure, he suspended human liver transplantation and started working on controlling bleeding and decreasing the risk of rejection of a transplanted organ. He realized that he would have to perfect transplantation in a less complex organ such as the kidney, so that became his new goal. Using steroids and another medicine, zarifofrine, to control rejection of the kidney by the recipient. He and his team met with success. Stahls then started working on a more potent immunosuppressive anti-rejection medicine called cyclosporin. In 1967, he believed he was ready again to perform a liver transplant in a human. By then, he was well established as a kidney transplant surgeon, and his research in transplantation was widely respected. Not content, he decided to pursue liver transplantation. There was much to lose. His earlier attempts had failed on more than one occasion, and his reputation was at stake. That year, he performed the first successful liver transplant in an adult. Over the next 13 years, his team performed 200 liver and 1,000 kidney transplants. More than 20,000 people across the world undergo a liver transplant each every year, largely because of Thomas Stahl's work. When the Apollo Hospitals group was celebrating the 10th anniversary of successful liver transplantation in India in 2008, we invited Dr. Stahls to be the chief guest. After all, who could have been more appropriate for the occasion? Dr. Stahls expressed his inability to travel due to advancing age, but never one to not go the extra mile. He recorded and sent a video wishing up the best for the future. Thousands of patients are able to lead normal lives today thanks to path-breaking work by these remarkable doctors. The Japanese Liver Transplantation Society registry in 2013 reported close to 80% survival for 20 years after liver transplantation. Kasahara et al. 2013. This would have been unimaginable 3 decades ago. But then Dr. Christian Bernard and Dr. Thomas Stahls changed the phases of procedures and redefined the boundaries of medicine. They did that through a rare display of courage, risking their reputation and careers because they believed they could make a huge difference to the lives of patients with organ failure. When I recounted all of this to Devang, I was really pleased to see him engrossed in the stories. I could see that they had made him stop and reconsider the importance of courage. His next question proved it. These was indeed remarkable stories of courage. Tell me, how can children be courageous? I told him that standing up for what you believe is right, standing by a classmate who wants to do the right but unpopular thing, questioning what others might take as granted, are all examples of courage. Responding to failure in academics and sports, not by running away but by doing better the next time, is courage. I told our son little acts of courage over a period of time can give you the confidence to be really brave and achieve things on the same scale as Dr. Christian Bernard and Dr. Thomas Stahls. Such courage does not appear overnight but takes conditioning. When Richard Branson was 4 years old, his mother would drop him off a few miles from their home. She wanted him to learn how to find his way home. When he was not yet 12, she made him cycle to Bournemouth, a distance of 80 kilometers. While she packed him sandwiches, she did not give him any water. She wanted him to fend for himself. She wanted him to be courageous. The lessons she taught him at a young age did yield impressive results. By the time he was 16, Branson had started his first business venture. As 22, he had created Virgin Records. When passengers enjoy the excellent service Virgin Airlines offers, they need to thank Richard Branson's mother for instilling in Branson the courage and ability to think out of the box. When we see our children wanting to do something that we believe will be too hard to do or too risky, we tend to stop them because we do not want them to fail or to get hurt. But before we try and stop them, we need to pursue and think. We should not let our own experience stand in the way of what they can learn. We need to tell them, be courageous to pursue what they want to. If they fail, they will learn from their failure. If they succeed, they might make the world a better place. I learned that courage was not the absence of fear, but the triumph over it. The brave man is not he who does not feel afraid, but he who conquers that fear. Nelson Mandela. Thank you.